Hello and welcome. This is Gert Mellak from SEOleverage.com, and today on episode number 24, I'm more than happy to welcome a good friend of mine, sometimes even mentor in hard times before hard decisions, Andy McDuff from 7 Mile Media. Welcome, Andy. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, Gert. Good to see you again, my friend. How are you doing?
Very good. It's always a pleasure to be in touch with you. We know usually our discussions about marketing in the world, you take like 3 or 4 hours. We aim at a lower, shorter time frame today.
That's right.
I do miss our pizza afternoons, though. I hope COVID is going to let us out soon again, and we
That would be
take
nice.
up those gatherings again. You're now the Chief Marketing Officer at 7 Mile Media.
That's right.
Very went upwards essentially from ads management to CMO right now. Could you give us listeners a little bit of your background so we know where your advice is going to come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in digital marketing, my goodness, in the late 90s, would you believe? I started touching it there. And I was involved actually more on exploring different opportunities on the business development side. So I was a consultant at the time and working with Amadeus at that time, actually, which is a big travel company. So we were looking at different travel e-commerce type of solutions at that time. And then as things evolved, I've obviously got involved with a lot more over the years, mainly around paid traffic, but I've been involved with a whole bunch of products, even projects with bigger brands like Heineken and Schweppes and things like that. So I've been mainly on the direct response paid media side, with sometimes some SEO, but it's been mainly on the paid media side, that's for sure. And right now, yes, I've been with 7 Mile Media now for a couple of years, and the agency itself has been around for about 5 years. It's run by our CEO Aaron Parkinson, who has been also heavily involved with a lot of direct response digital marketing and projects in his day as well. So we work very well together. We've got a big team of about 20, 25 people. We've got about 50 clients. And we're an agency which really works holistically, meaning that we don't just look at paid media. We look at the business model of our clients. We make sure that they're going to be profitable as they run paid traffic. We also take care of looking at the funnels, the copy. We even give them advice and assistance and support around on the sales side, because quite a lot of our clients are sort of in the coaching they're very specialist and coaching kind of niche. Not only that, we have some other sort of bigger brands, more broader brands as well on e-commerce, but we generally make sure that their business models are sustainable before we actually take them on, because otherwise it's just a miserable adventure for them and for us, so we want to make sure that they're profitable. And sometimes that takes longer and shorter. I mean, average time we're with our clients is about 1 to 2 years. And then sometimes they take stuff in-house or they continue working with us to scale. But yes, generally speaking, we're scaling, and we're spending, I would say, between Facebook and Google was looking about yesterday, it's about on average something like $10 million a month in advertising spend. So it's quite a lot. We got specialist media buyers that are specialists in YouTube, specialists in display, search, and so on and so forth. So that's the whole gamut. Yeah, that's pretty much a solid, pretty wide covering introduction there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I definitely love your insight, because very, very often you might address problems we talk about, and we did some paid media in the past. We're more focused on SEO now, but very often you would bring up an example that really like 10x, 100x of what we were talking about with your background, which was really helpful, and it's a very different perspective. I want today to focus a little bit about paid search. Check out what platforms do we have for paid media in general that could make for a good connection or complementing our SEO strategy in a way where we can leverage the traffic we already get, and we scale with our SEO methods further and maybe extract more conversions from them, use the paid platforms, maybe to run some testing before we really wrap up a huge SEO strategy, which we all know is a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what could someone do who, for example, wants to test a new offer, or is before starting actually a landing page, they know they want to have SEO, but they are not sure if this is really going to work, if their offer is going to work. What could someone like this do?
Yeah, so essentially the first thing is obviously pretty much what we would recommend in that situation is that we would start with a minimal viable funnel. That could take different shapes and forms, depending on what the offer is at the back end, whether it's like trying to get a call, schedule a discovery call, if you're like, for example, a coach.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing would be to build a minimal viable funnel with suitable copy, maybe some VSL, a video sales letter, and so forth, to sell the appointment in this case, and that type of situation. And then, but even perhaps before that, we would do some keyword research to see if there's actual demand in Google search itself, which is of course where all the SEO focus is placed, or at least 95% of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would look in Google search generally to do some prospecting. With that said, we also can do that in Facebook and Instagram as well. It's got a lot of our clients. It depends on the market, to be honest, but sometimes we would go to Google search, and Google search is the best quality traffic out there in terms of actual people looking for your thing, right? And it's a good way to test whether the keywords that you would select and ultimately discover, and that discovery period would typically last anywhere between 1 to 3 months, depending on budget and so on and so forth.
Right.
So we would discover what the keywords were. We would send that traffic directly into a minimal viable funnel, making sure that the actual landing page converts if it's an opt-in for a free offer, or if it would go beyond that. So we do that testing phase, and then we can discover and take all the different metrics. We have something like 20 different business models that we've got mapped out. We know, because we have benchmarks on exactly what we would expect in a type of funnel in terms of conversion rates, in terms of CPCs, CPMs. CPCs would vary because of the client, obviously, in Google search. But really what it does is just tests the offer, obviously a minimal viable funnel, and then we find the keywords that are really starting to drive engagement and obviously conversions, because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, there've got to be conversions in the mix. And as I said, sometimes we do actually run Facebook and Instagram traffic. When we speak to clients, we first have to understand what they're offering. And then we've got different kind of situations where we would perhaps even start in YouTube, perhaps more than Facebook, perhaps it's going to be Google search. But essentially, if it's going to be geared towards SEO, we would almost certainly start with Google search in 95% of the cases, because we want to discover what are the keywords that ultimately you need to optimize for SEO.
Absolutely. There are so many great points here. One thing I really like, and we experienced the same thing when we became a little bit bigger, is that at some point when you start having 20, 30 clients or more, you have a very good overview and can better expect what is realistic. Whereas when I think about the early days where I had maybe 5 clients in SEO and 3 clients we did run Google ads or Facebook ads or something like this, we didn't really have a comparison. We couldn't really tell the client this is a good result, this is a bad result, which is at a completely different position where I can say, okay, we've got 5 clients in the coaching space, we might have 10 in the consulting space, we might have 5 B2B, and we have a very good idea across different industries what is to be expected, what is realistic to be ranking for. And then especially when you mention Google ads, very often clients who do not have a website or finally want to go into SEO because they have been growing via Facebook ads maybe, but they want to get their SEO going, they would ask us for what we call a target research, which is essentially a keyword research, a little bit of on steroids, because we check all kinds of platforms from Quora.com to social media to Facebook groups, etc., for phrases that actual people, actual target clients really use. And when we come up essentially with a big collection, which we then translate into topics that can then target those keywords. But before actually really starting the process, very often we then ask clients, if they're completely new and they don't have any experience here, to select like the most promising of those keywords, and we set up what you call a minimum viable funnel, and say, okay, let's at least drive some traffic to a landing page, search traffic for a month or two, see what this does. Can we really confirm our assumption that this is going to behave this way, or your landing page and your way of offer defining the offer really makes a conversion happening, right?
Exactly, yeah. And at the end of the day, it really depends on the stage you are in the businesses. A lot of the businesses that come to us are already spending on paid traffic. They have SEO as well. They have different marketing strategies, online marketing strategies in place. And essentially, what they're doing when they come to us, they're normally spending anywhere between 500 to 1,000 a day. And what they want to do is scale. And when they've tried to scale, the ROAS, the return on ad spend, or the return on investment goes into the toilet essentially,
Right.
because there's lots of different things. Scaling can get a little bit tricky, but we find that it really comes down to the situation. And if you're starting out right at the very beginning, it's probably best to start with something around Google search with a minimum viable funnel, looking at those keyword sort of clusters or topics, if you like, and start testing and sending some test traffic. And it doesn't have to be like super expensive, right? You can run Google search campaigns on very long tail keywords to see, or extended or longer phrase match, because broad modified's gone away now, or it is going away shortly. But when you can test along, not so much the very top keywords, you can go for lower volume, longer tail keywords if you've got limited budgets. So you can certainly test that way. It really comes down to doing the correct, like you're doing in SEO leverage, is looking at all the different potential keywords that people are using in the market, because you've got to go where people are searching for, what they're looking for. If you're trying to create a market, well, then you probably need a much bigger marketing budget to do that, because that's incredibly difficult to do.
Absolutely, yeah, it's definitely a good point. We definitely want to always know where we're heading. We try to find, like, SEO is a long-term strategy, so we try to find like always the next step. The first step, if I think I know the keyword, is to prove, can this keyword really work? Does this attract traffic? Do my ads, really my text, my way of talking about this, is this attracting clicks? Do they come to this website? And then really move forward. This is definitely the testing. Also involves for us a search volume test, which is really interesting, because we have a lot of tools, and very often clients have a good idea what a search volume is behind their main keyword. They might have seen Ahrefs or SEMrush or some plugins that show you that, I don't know, which keyword is being searched for 5,000 times, which is really nice. But then very often we see that those values are really at rough estimations. So tools have their formulas on how they come up with, and very often we see that the relation between two search volumes might be accurate. So if one keyword gets twice as much search volume as the other one, this relation might be correct. But then the actual search volume, we're not going to know this until we run ads, for example, and say, okay, how often do our ads get shown? And what share of the overall impressions do we have? So we can then run the math and say, okay, the actual search volume is probably X. And then we can see if this still makes sense. Does it still make sense to run an SEO strategy for a few months to get this ranking, if the real search volume isn't anywhere near maybe of the tools, or of what the tools actually say? Okay, so this is definitely something that has been saving quite a few clients already, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And when you go, of course, when you're running ads, you're getting real live market data. So what we often say to clients right at the very beginning, during the first 3 months, is that you are actually actively going out to the marketplace to say, do these keywords actually give me the return on investment that clients are looking for? They're doing They're going out to the market and actually testing it live. And it's kind of obviously a fast track. It's not, if you want to keep going with Google search, it certainly works very well when you set everything up, but it's very complementary, I think, to SEO. But SEO, as we all know, is a medium to long-term strategy, but it's extremely profitable because, of course, everyone thinks, and quite rightly so, that if I get my SEO dialed in, I don't have to rely on paid traffic to keep my business alive. And that's a very valid point. What we found is that, however, with Google search or even remarketing, which we can talk about, or YouTube, you can get a lot more scale. So if you're looking for volume, if you're trying to, 5x your business, we've got clients doing anything from $250,000 a month in revenue up to about 4 or 5 million a month in revenue, out of like coaching programs or products and things like that. So what we find is that you want to actually sort of scale, if you want to scale things, it's pretty good for that. But it's also good at the initial testing to make sure that the real market is actually looking for what before you start optimizing for the keyword. So it's kind of complementary at the same time with SEO. But SEO is really, really, really strong for sort of sustainable traffic coming in and increasing, obviously, the rankings for different keywords.
I really like where you said this is really a complementary strategy. Essentially, very often I hear people tell me, "Yeah, when we finally get the rankings, we're going to switch the ads off." I'm not sure how you think about it. I always say, "Look, why don't you come out twice on the first page? What's really the big deal? You can get more attention coming up in the ads and below that." So for many people, the overall goal is to get the ranking going, and then they switch off ads, and I save, I don't know how many thousands of dollars of ad spend every month. But essentially, I see really SEO. I obviously like it and think it's a very good strategy, but I see it as one pillar really. And the same as we saw with when COVID hit, that all the companies that were only relying on Facebook ads and a very quick turnaround suddenly had to switch off their ads because the return on investment wasn't there for a few weeks. And then they saw nobody's searching for us, nobody's finding us. Even if they search for our product, they don't find us. This is where we experience a lot of growth because people saw, okay, having one pillar below our entire marketing foundation is not enough. This can break. Something can happen. Facebook can shut an account down for a few weeks. Might be hard to recover. These things I've heard, they happen. So this is where we see that SEO is one important pillar. And I think another point where paid media really complements SEO really well is when it comes to remarketing. This is really one of my favorite topics in the paid marketing space because I've seen it be so powerful. We had a client once where we suggested they should run remarketing campaigns, essentially because we knew clients who came to their website with the ranking we got them were about to purchase. But it was a complex purchasing process. They needed a lot of details. So essentially what we did was run, I think it was Facebook ads back then, or if it did, you could do it YouTube as well then. I don't know, but they essentially within a couple of weeks paid for our consulting fees because just of the remarketing budget that brought those people back. Could you briefly explain what remarketing does, how this works, retargeting, and how someone relying mostly on SEO right now could leverage remarketing for their growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So with remarketing, which is also called retargeting, it's the same thing. They call it, I believe in Google, they call it remarketing or retargeting. And then I can't remember, Facebook say retargeting or remarketing. But it's the same thing. It's essentially showing an ad to someone that has already interacted with your website or has reached a certain step if you have some kind of funnel built in to your website, a certain step. So they might have, for example, they might have reached your booking page or your free video series training or something like that, but they didn't actually take the final step and actually sign up or book a calendar. You can remarket to everybody that visits your website. Meaning that you can show an ad in different platforms, which I'll talk about in a moment. But you can basically, for very low cost, essentially show an ad to people that have interacted in some way or another with your website. So the question is, okay, well, where can you actually remarket? Well, you can remarket in Facebook, you can remarket in Instagram, you can remarket in any of the Google networks, essentially. So Google has different paid networks. One is called Google Search, which of course is what is sometimes called PPC. Then you have Google Display, which is the world's largest advertising network by far. The amount of impressions that are available in Google Display is enormous. Then you also have Google Discovery, and you have YouTube as well. So that's sort of like the Google suite of things. Then you have something which fewer people know about, which is known as the programmatic advertising network. So when you go to the big sites like, I don't know, CNBC or CNN or Fox or any of BBC.com, you'll see some ads, no doubt banners on the right hand side or sometimes at the top and so on and so forth. Most of those kind of very, very high traffic sites are not always accessible in Google Display. So you have to go to another platform like Adroll. So we use Adroll with clients. This is essentially a remarketing platform. You place a pixel when you sign up for Adroll, which is free. It's a self-serving platform, so you can sign up and what have you. You have to install something called a pixel on all the pages on your website. Then you have to do a bunch of things in the platform itself. But I can actually show you, because I know we were going to talk a little bit about remarketing. I'm going to share my screen here.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm going to show you a sample report of what remarketing looks like in Adroll. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, perfect.
So this is just a sample report. You can see that everybody that's visited the site, we're actually retargeting them with banner ads. And it's normal, by the way, that the CTR, the click-through rate, be on average is about 0.2% in the programmatic or remarketing space like here. It's very low, and that's to be expected. And then the CPMs can range from anything from, I don't know, $5 right up to, as you can see, quite high here. So this is a real campaign. This is just like what we spent in one day. And you can see how many impressions we've shown into the mail.yahoo.com platform. We've gone to Fox News, we've gone to CNN, New York Times. There's a whole bunch in here that you can see, and there's some obviously that we don't know. And you can see that we're getting some clicks through here. Now, this is obviously a higher spend traffic, but we're also getting into Reddit. You're going into all the Yahoo properties as well. There's Travel Dreams, CNET.com, well-known New York Post, Daily Mail in the UK. You can get access and show your ad to someone only when someone has interacted with your website. So if they visited, let's say, 3 pages on your website, and you want to actually go ahead and try and show them an ad to get them back to do another action, it's very, very effective. We typically get anywhere on average, not immediately, and I have to put a disclaimer out there, but on average, we get about 5 times. So for every dollar you spend in Adroll, you get about, on average, 5 times back. But you need data. So it takes a good 2 to 3 months, and it depends on how much you spend. If you're spending very little, but you can start off with literally $5 a day, and you will start getting your ads out there for people that have visited your website. So it's a very good platform. Then on retargeting on other places, you've got Google as well, of course. Now the only thing with Google, and I mentioned Google Display as well, so the only requirements is how many active visits you have in the last 30 days. Otherwise, your ad will simply not show. So in the case of Google Display, it's about, currently it's 100 active visitors that you've had on your site for the last 30 days.
Okay.
Then you can start showing Google Display ads, which are, again, these banners, basically. If you want to, let's say, show a video on YouTube for someone who's visited your site, that requirement is a little bit bigger. You need at least 1,000 active visits in the last 30 days. So YouTube is a little bit different. Google search remarketing as well you can do. That again requires, I believe, 1,000 if I'm not mistaken correctly. So Google has these kind of restrictions. Facebook, on the other hand, does not. So you could even just remarket and show an ad in Facebook and Instagram, even when your audience size is very small. It's very, very good for that. And in fact, you can actually use Adroll to talk directly to your Facebook ad account. You can connect the systems so that you actually manage everything just from Adroll if you prefer. Now, with all that said, my recommendation for everybody, irrespective if you're going to run ads or not, is set up a Google Ads account that's free, set up an Adroll account, it's free. Both of them are going to give you remarketing pixels, or what's known as a pixel. If you have Facebook, you obviously need a business manager, and you need to create an ad account that will give you a pixel. But all these things, you should place them in your website. We use Google Tag Manager to do that for our clients, and where we place all of those pixels on, because what's happening is that the Google global tag, for example, or Facebook or the Adroll pixel, they're all collecting data. Even if all your traffic is direct and organic or email driven, it's collecting data on the pixel. So even if you're not running ads, let the systems collect data from your website, so that whenever at one point you want to start advertising, you can do so, but leveraging data that's already been collected. So when you that's my recommendation, is to put those pixels onto your website. Just let the pixels collect organic data. Even if it's organic traffic, doesn't matter. You don't have to have been running ads, but get those pixels collecting data as soon as you can. And then if you decide to switch ads on in 6 months time, 1 year time, you've got 6 months or a year of data there, just because you put them on in the first place.
Right.
But yeah,
definitely a good suggestion. Yeah. So just to summarize this a little bit. So with remarketing, we can show people banners or videos on other platforms that have been on our site before. So if I think probably most people know this from tourism. If you once searched for a flight or a vacation or something like this, you're going to see banners about vacation all over the place. If you have checked out something on Amazon, you probably get the product suggestions of the same segment on other platforms as well. So they kind of identify you, and then they impact you with ads. You mentioned different platforms. Adroll, we did some testing on Adroll with very interesting results. So we saw Adroll really to get the word out, make sure your brand appears more important, because it's really shown on very important sites, whereas Google might show you on every single blog with 5 visitors, you might come up as an ad. But Adroll really shows you. I got clients make a screenshot from our ad and send it to us because they saw us next to one of the biggest newspapers. I think it was a Spanish campaign a couple of years ago. So they were really impressed that we could afford to be there. They didn't know this didn't cost us not even, I think, €1 or €2 to be there. But it really gives you like a sense of a serious business, which is very often what online businesses are really searching for. So you might have come across a page you really like, the content, but you don't trust them enough to really spend money on them just now. But then you see their ads next to really big on really big sites. You see they have a good marketing budget, etc. So this might also impact conversions right there. As you mentioned, the 0.2% would be a normal click-through rate in the programmatic marketing, which would be the Adroll side of things. But people can also go to Google, for example, run ads through Google through the display network to show banners, show YouTube videos to those people that have been on the site before. We're doing this for clients very successfully with YouTube right now. This seems to be working very well. So clients that have a very decent traffic to their website are then seeing a very quick 10-20 second video where essentially the site owner tells them, look, we have this offer, and they already know him because they have been engaging with the site and with the content before. So this works really well. brings in leads anywhere from, I think, from $0.7 to $2 or something like this. Really, really good, high quality leads. So this is definitely something I think very often is completely overlooked, especially by business owners that have been growing in an organic way and say, look, whatever I content I write ranks because I have authority status, etc. But there's a whole lot of potential that's essentially not leveraged if you don't look past the organic one. And then in Facebook, you mentioned that the audience size can be smaller. So it might be with testing Facebook ads, at least at the level where you say, I don't have enough traffic to go after YouTube, but I can try something on Facebook or can try something on Adroll first.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you can start with very low budgets. I mean, you don't need like huge budgets on remarketing to start with. It really depends on the volume of organic traffic that's coming to your site already. If you've got thousands per day, obviously you probably put a little bit more budget behind it, you know, but you can start as little as $5-10 a day and all the rest of it. Most of our clients were starting at about $100 a day because they've already got significant front end traffic through brand recognition or through essentially organic traffic as well, podcasts and that sort of thing. So they've already got a substantial presence. So we obviously give them a lot more budget there. And we go from anything from 100 to 1,000 a day easily on retargeting because it's profitable. At the end of the day, what you're looking for is it profitable? Do the numbers stack up? Am I making a return on ad spend above one? And probably well above one because you've got other fixed costs in the business. So you've got to actually look at the return on investment overall. But yes, you can absolutely do that. And YouTube is very interesting. It works very well. Again, you need that volume of 1,000 active visitors in the last 30 days. So that's the only downside. But you can use video as well, a little bit of remarketing video in Adroll as well. You just got to follow the IAB standards on that, but which is the Internet Advertising Bureau standards. So if you follow them, that's pretty much what all the programmatic networks are using behind Adroll. Sounds very technical, but it works. The bottom line is that it works. It works generally very well. As I did say, I want to mention this game. Yes, you do have to give it, you know, probably depending on the volume of ad spend you're making, but you do have to give it anywhere. It can work very quickly. Within days, you can have leads or sales and all that within days, depending on the volume. And sometimes it can take a little bit longer. But again, if you put those pixels on your websites immediately, then the systems are already collecting data, even if you don't spend a dime, you know?
Right. Absolutely. That's definitely interesting. Let me ask you something. If I have a website and I get a decent traffic, I don't know, 10, 20,000 visitors a day, what would I show to my retargeting audience? Would I drive them back to what they have already seen? Would I give them a lead magnet? Would I give them a sales page? Would I send them just back to my homepage so they just don't forget me? What would you suggest? Or do you have any experience here? What usually works better?
Yeah, so again, you would there's lots of different retargeting strategies. It's not just it depends on your objective. So if you are going for leads, then if you're going for brand awareness and you just want people to come back and visit your blog and your content and your site and so on and so forth, then you would probably just do a general sort of broad spread retargeting strategy just to get people back to your website and spend more time on your website. So that's more about at the awareness phase. However, if you're looking for a lead, like you need a lead, well then, yes, providing certain conditions are met, i.e. how many pages they've seen in your website, how long have they spent on your website. You should, by the way, use Google Analytics with all of this as well, of course. That will give data, particularly with the Google platforms. But you would then retarget essentially back to your lead magnet. Your webinar might be your you know, your free training course. It might be, it could be, for example, ultimately, if you need calls, if you need sales calls, that could be another. We normally have different retargeting banners for different people, for different stages in the funnel, meaning that if they've reached the point when they have tried or looks like they were going to make an appointment, but they didn't make an appointment, we would set up messaging, and we would design a banner specifically to get them back to a page or a pre-sale page before the actual appointment or calendar, like a schedule once or a Calendly.
Right.
If it's a lead magnet and they've reached the actual landing page where you, or the page on your site where you have that, we would probably send them back to a landing page. And when I mean landing page, we'll get rid of all the distractions or menus and so on, because we just want them to convert. So we would send them back to a landing page where they can opt in for that free gift that you're offering, right? Whatever it is, it would be. So we have different remarketing strategies. Some of them are based on the nature of, first of all, you've got to be clear about what it is you want to achieve. And then we take the whole budget and then we decide, okay, well, we look at all the different statistics and we say, okay, let's put more on this focus because this person right now is just trying to get more credibility. Like you said, having your banner appear next to a high authority website, it could be BBC, could be Fox, could be CNN, doesn't matter, but you are getting the credibility by showing your banner there. So it improves. And just by getting there, even if you're paying for you're not paying. I mean, the clicks can vary. The cost per clicks can vary, obviously, but it's the CPMS that's what you're paying for. You're paying for CPMS. And I looked at, for example, the CPMS on MSN.com. Yesterday they were $13. Fox News was $8. New York Times was $19. So it depends because it's an auction at the end of the day. Right. So in answer to your original question though on retargeting strategies, what I would recommend is that you need to basically have different creatives, add creatives with different messaging. Retargeting basically, which would then, when they click on it, would go back to the step in the funnel that you're trying to get the conversion. So that's what I would do there. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. I remember where we did this on a company that was manufacturing windows and doors, where we essentially were able to spread them completely around and say, okay, these are doors people. They're not looking for windows. Right. These are Windows people. We kind of created two different audiences. The audiences were created organically, so people found those sites. We just then divided them based on which part of the website they were looking for, which on a blog it could be the category based on what is in the category. If it says window and if it says door in the category, you have two different audiences. So we would send them directly back into the funnel to register their appointment with a sales rep or something like this. If they were door people, and then we have like a little bit of both, where we just did branding because if someone looks at doors and windows together, probably they are thinking of purchasing a house in 2 years, so they might be very far off, but are still worth impacting with the brand. And I think branding is something also in the SEO context is very underestimated. So I think we are heading. That's not me thinking this has been confirmed by many thought leaders out there. We're heading into a phase, apparently, where the brand is really what's going to count the most. So strengthening your brand and brand recognition in your space in a few years, where you probably can pay $20 and get a website built out with 500 pieces of original content created by an artificial intelligence engine. The brand is going to be important, and the relation from the brand to a site, to an owner or a team of people around this site, I think there is going to be a good connection. Google goes in this direction with their EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. They really want to know who is behind this brand. Is this a real business? Are those real people? Are those people connected to the industry they're talking about, etc.? So this, if I think about this and think about branding, I think this goes very close together. And we know that just by impacting people with a brand, with brand messaging, we can just make sure that if they do some research across different, car dealerships, for example, the car dealership that works on branding is going to be one of their favorite choices. And many times we see the decision process really takes a very long time. So if I think about me trying or thinking about purchasing a car, I'm pretty much in the market, but I might not purchase it before next year because my car is still good, but I'm already researching, right? I'm already checking out car dealerships. I'm checking out manufacturers. Interestingly, I hardly get anything from them. They don't expect too much from this, I think. I think they would have a good chance and good potential. I'm really surprised I hardly get any remarketing from those guys.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of entry points that are completely missed, but that could accompany a client over a longer period of time, just
Yeah.
popping up once in a while. I understand you can reduce the frequency of how often we release
Yes.
those, or pause them and then take them up again based on the strategy. I've seen a lot of cool things you guys are doing here. So definitely this is an amazing way to extract really more conversions. Ultimately, it's all about conversions, as you're saying, conversions out of every visitor that comes in organically, and
Yeah.
provides a lot of value. I have one last question before we wrap
Sure.
this up. I want to be conscious of your time here, really, and we try to make this
Okay.
short
No problem.
as possible. When it comes to the ad creatives, I
Yeah.
could imagine that after a while, the ads are not working as well anymore. If I have seen an
Sure.
ad multiple times, probably this is not going to be like the ad I'm going to click on every single week. How often do you think ad creatives should be redone, recreated, revised?
Okay, great question. I think it comes down again to the volume game. I mean, here in the agency, we're doing just alone in Facebook, 27 or 30 combinations a week in terms of testing. So it's quite a lot of testing that's going on that we're doing right now. But those are obviously clients that are spending, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 a day in Facebook ads and so on and so forth. So it really comes down to, yes, you do need to refresh creative to a degree, but here's the thing with ads, frequency in marketing generally works.
Mhm.
When they see the same message, we are not overly concerned. Like if you're doing more on the branding side, we're not overly concerned about showing the messaging too much, or
Okay.
because frequency works. They keep seeing the same headline, the same message, the same image. Now, with that said, we do actually have parameters because we're always testing. And what we normally do is we have 5 to 10% budget we set aside for testing. So
Mhm.
we allocate 90% of the budget to things that work and scale those. That's our general rule of thumb. And then we're always testing 5 to 10% of the budget every month in our case.
Mhm.
But yes, it's true that on direct response things, so for example, if you're doing remarketing, and you're not getting the 0.2%, for example, click-through rate that I mentioned, after let's say 2 to 3 weeks, then yes, you have to refresh the creative. And we normally start out with at least five different creatives that we put into the mix right from the word go, so that the system can optimize and work because they've got AI algorithms behind, right? So they'll try to send different ads to different placements during different times of the day, during the course of the day, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So it's a mix really of two things, Gert, I would say. One is frequency is good for branding. Yeah, I remember this phrase. I don't remember who said it, but I like it. It's BBB, which is brand in the brain until they buy. BBB. So that's a brand in the brain until they buy, which refers to the frequency, right? So it's good in display, but yes, you do have to test. And if you're doing remarketing to get them to register for your webinar, if you are seeing like depending on how much you're spending, obviously, but normally we would refresh them every 1 or 2 weeks on average is what we do is we refresh the creative. Creative is terribly, terribly important. In paid media, your ads will burn out, and so the creative, the copy and the creative aspects is also one of the reasons why paid media works over the long term, but that requires obviously a lot of work. You need to you need to put in the hours to actually figure out the crooks, the angles, all that kind of thing, the different headlines and so on. So we're testing a lot of that every week, and in fact we now use our own AI software where we upload creatives into our software,
Mhm.
and it's analyzing billions of data points, and it gives us a forecast out of maybe 1,000 different combinations of headlines and creative. It actually tells us. Now, it doesn't work all the time, but we use part of those creatives into our testing budgets, you know. But it's pretty good.
I've seen very interesting progress with AI software just recently. I keep playing with this because it's really going to, I think, revolutionize content marketing in general. We see AI software commercially available that is able to write headlines, write copy for Facebook ads, shorter copy especially. And I think we're probably a year or two away from having really an AI software that puts together entire articles, at least on a draft level, where then maybe an editor needs to look through this and clean some things up, or really make sure this is targeted or change the tone maybe a little bit. But AI is really advanced, and this is, at some point it seems like it's going to be AI playing against AI more than anything else to get things happening. But it's really going to be interesting times. So I really want to thank you, Andy. I think we learned a lot. I wanted to quickly just recap. We have talked about paid media being a good tool to test an idea, test an offer, make sure these we find keywords that really convert, make sure our offer converts. I know James Remco is really big on the offer, for example. That offer that converts is the biggest thing. Once you have this, everything else is going to line up. But if you have an idea and you haven't really seen people spend money on that idea, you don't really have a business yet. You need to test and make sure you get answers quickly or fail quickly so you can move on. Because just having an idea, and we had some clients we just had to reject because they were so far away from really verifying and validating their idea. Where we said, before you think of SEO, let's do some ads really to make sure you validate your offer, and everybody, and especially you are going to have more confidence in this process and then spend a few months on SEO. But definitely for testing. And we also talked about paid media, paid search in this regard, also for verification of search volumes. So very often search volumes tools give us can be off. I've heard good things about Moz.com's volumes, for example, to be a little bit closer, but I really very often prefer to double check and cross check and say, okay, let's have this run for a week. What is the normal week's search volume? I don't even have to spend a lot of money there. I just want to know how many impressions do I get? How many impressions do I miss? And then do my math and say, okay, from the 500 search volume, it's really only 240. Does this still end up in a positive return on investment, or does this completely crash my spreadsheet calculations, right?
Exactly.
We focused a lot of remarketing. You were really generous here, providing a lot of ideas, platforms, Adroll, Google, Facebook, depending on what we're trying to achieve. We talked about branding being one key aspect, really strengthen the brand, come up on really important sites, which might impact conversions, might impact
positioning.
Absolutely. And I really like that you mentioned the 10% of the budget for testing. I think this is something many people are not considering. They just say, okay, I spend $500, I spend $2,000 a month on ads, but they don't consider that ongoing testing essentially is going to increase their return on ad spend, just by figuring out what just works much better. And sometimes it's really stupid things. Sometimes when I run some tests on Google Ads, or I see some headlines with changes, sometimes really stupid changes. I remember when we had a few years back, the really simple search ads where you had line 1 and line 2 on the search end. Sometimes just switching those two lines doubled rates. And if you just leave this in there and it's working always working, you might lose essentially or waste 50% of your budget just because you don't copy this ad and switch two lines and see if this leads to a better result. Thank you so much, Andy, really. Where could people get in touch with you if they want to know more, if they might be interested in getting in touch with 7 Media?
So all it is, I mean, it's you just go to the website there, everything should be there. It's very straightforward. You can contact us through there. It's the number 7 Mile Media altogether, and then 4 letters after that, SEZC or SEZC.com. Bit of an odd one, I know, And that's just because of the way the name was incorporated and so on. But that's the way you can reach us. It's 7 Mile Media, SEZC.com. Just contact us through there. My email is very straightforward. It's Andy at that same domain. You can just reach me there. If you wanted to reach out to me personally, that's fine. And yeah, we can, if we're a good fit, we can have a chat and so on and so forth about anything that interested. And I wanted to finish off something with what you just said there about the offer. It doesn't matter whether it's SEO or paid media. We always find the same. If you don't have an offer that converts, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're the best ranked keyword, or whether you're the most most traffic on Fox News or whatever it is. It doesn't matter how good you are or how good the advertising is. If you just don't have an offer that converts, and this is the toughest part, right? It's going to be difficult to make it very little work. So this is why we do offer testing, and we have these kind of sort of situations with clients, because they also need to scale into different offers. They can't just stay on one offer. Even ads and offers burn out. They need to refresh, update, or upgrade their offers. So that's where we work a lot with clients, because that's the only way they can scale. But anyway, I wanted to mention that on offers because it's a really good point, James.
Absolutely. I just had a flashback. We lost a client because their offer didn't convert. We brought them to number 1 and they didn't make a sale. And obviously they dropped the SEO agency because they couldn't use us if they couldn't bring up sales. So it was a little bit of a shame. They were number 1 in the LED space when it was really big, the LED topic here in Europe. But yeah, you can lose a client if they don't convert, obviously. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for taking the time. If you're listening to this and you are interested in paid search in scaling up your offer, definitely get in touch with Andy McDuff, 7 Mile Media, SECC.com. We're going to link to this in the show notes on SEOleverage.com/podcast. Find this information under episode 24. And definitely, if you think this topic is especially interesting, if you think there is something else you would want to hear on this show, definitely reach out to us on SEOleverage.com. We're happy to record this. We're going to invite the expert that can help you to this show. Thank you very much, Andy McDuff. It was a pleasure to catch up with you.
Great to see you again, Gert. Bye-bye. See you soon.